So hello and welcome back to another Exploring Outlands. And today we are exploring Zangarmarsh, which I thought was really interesting because I actually did a little bit of research and found out some stuff I didn't know about Zangarmarsh. It was formerly a sea that was called the Zangar Sea, and it was called also the Zangar encroachment, and it was created from the rotting body of the spore mound Zang. Now, spore mounds, I didn't know this at all. They were a carnivorous invasive strain of plant that arose on Draenor during its earliest days and consumed everything in sight. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Didn't know that and thought that was kind of cool to find out, you know? The more you learn. Now, the first spot that we're going to go check out here in Zangarmarsh is the Cenarian Refuge. It's a neutral faction town in Zangarmarsh, and frustratingly enough, it does not have a flight point. It is close to a Horde and an Alliance base area that both have flight points, but it doesn't have one, and I've always felt like that is a huge oversight on Blizzard's part. It has everything else that you need. It has a mailbox, an inn. It's even part of the tavern crawl. And in that tavern crawl, they do have their own signature drink, which is called let me look it up here. It is called the Coilfang Reserve. And if you've never done the tavern crawls, they're a lot of fun. It's a questing hub, and it is the place where you have a lot of repeatable quests so that you can gain reputation with the Cenarian expedition. And that's how you end up getting your Hyjal mount. It's a very cool mount, and I really enjoy it. It took me until last year to actually get that mount and get exalted with them, because it's just one that I never really ground out. I also really like this tower. It's a good place to just stand up and look out over Zangarmarsh. So this has got a bunch of NPCs here where you can get things like cooking supplies, fishing supplies, and again, you can turn in things with Fedrin Swiftspear, who is the Cenarian Expedition Quartermaster. If you are a low level, Wowipedia does want you to know that guards might not always protect you in this town. So if you are doing world PvP, if a high level character is chasing you, don't count on the Cenarian Expedition, the Cenarian Refuge, to guard you. So here we are at Fedrin Swiftspear, and as you can see, he has a lot of different things that you can buy, but the Cenarian War Hippogriff is probably the biggest draw. Also, I had to go over and see Talut here because he was actually one of the top 10 useless, what is he called? I just completely blanked on what these guys are, but you know what? That's okay. Krendor did a video about him just recently, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to go over and say hello to Talut when I go to the Cenarian Refuge, since I just saw him in a video. Also, there's a really fun quest that you can do here, and that is with this lady up here. And in it, you can actually fly all over Zangarmarsh as you're trying to figure out where all the water is going, because that is the big mystery in Zangarmarsh. Alright, now we're gonna move on along. directly ahead is not exactly the happiest of all areas, and that is the Dead Mire. The Dead Mire is a big dead area that's in northeastern Zangarmarsh. It was once a lake that served as a spawning ground for these withered bog lords and fungal giants that you see. However, it's been almost completely drained by the Naga. They've been using huge pumps to drain most of the lakes, and the remaining wildlife that is in this area has become completely twisted and withered. They're drying up. It's actually kind of sad, and it's one of the things that the Cenarian Circle is here to try to put right. I seem to remember that there used to be a quest in here where you found like the remains of somebody, but I could not for the life of me remember. What I did think was kind of cool, and I don't know if there's any lore behind it, is this giant snake that I would assume would have been at the bottom of the lake when there was a lake here. And it kind of makes me wonder if there were trolls here. Except, honestly, this used to be Draenor, so I don't think there were trolls on Draenor. I'm not sure. If anybody actually knows the answer to that question, let me know, because now I'm really curious, and I'm not sure what's up with that. You can definitely see as you go through the Dead Mire, it changes from dead to very vibrant and green, and that's definitely due to the lack of water. Now we are going to move on to the first of the Alliance areas, and that is Tel'Rador. Now, I came here a lot back in the Burning Crusade, and even Wrath of the Lich King. I did my fair share of dying off of this elevator because it has no rails, and if you misjudge it, like I used to always do, you can fall off and it's a long way down. But I never really looked into the history of this place either, and so I figured I'd share it with you because I didn't know it and you might not know it either. It was actually originally the home of a small order of anchorites and vindicators that maintained shrines all through Zangar. Before the orcs assaulted Shatarath, the civilian Draenei population all came to Tel'Rador. Thereby, the anchorites' retreat became a refuge for many of their people. And after the destruction of Draenor, Nobundu traveled here to teach the Draenei the ways of shamanism. A very interesting thing about Tel'Rador is it has no food vendors, and it has no food vendors for an actual lore reason. Most of the quests that you get in Tel'Rador relate to gathering food because they were close to starving, and food was to be shared amongst their own people and not sold to outsiders. So I thought that was really interesting. It also has a beautiful fountain that we're going to get a close-up on here soon that I guess I never took the time to just really check it out. I also do like that their inn here has both human beds and beds for Draenei. But yeah, I thought this was a very interesting statue, and I think it does relate to the food thing because it looks like they're gathering food and drink. It's a very pretty statue. I really kind of like it. So yes, there is a flight point here, there's an inn, and a whole lot of quests. And like it says, most of those quests deal with gathering food. I also like that it almost looks like there's a couple little little houses built into the side of this giant mushroom, and I thought it was really cool. So, also, Telrador is nowhere to be found in the Warlords of Draenor expansion, but there is a large mushroom that's roughly in its location of Frostfire and Talador. It's interesting, but not big enough to be this place. I thought it was interesting, and there's speculation that the monastery was just kind of discontinued in the alternate timeline, or possibly the Iron Horde maybe destroyed it. Hard to say, but that was an interesting little factoid. Alright, now we're gonna move along. And we're going right over here to the Twin Spire ruins, and it's the remains of a holy site in Zangarmarsh, a holy Draenei site. And this is the contested area. There's 2 towers and a burial ground, and the towers are capturable. When both towers get captured by a faction, then their battle standards would be carried forth and placed in the graveyard, giving complete control to the faction. But this is one of those areas that I really don't know anything about because I'm just not a PvPer. But, you know, I do know that a lot of people have some very good memories of this area. The only reason I know this area at all is because it is a archaeology dig site, and I have dug plenty of archaeology fragments out of the Twin Spire ruins area. So that is my fun fact. And now we're going to move on to one of my very favorite entrances to a dungeon area, and that is the Coilfang Reservoir. It's an artificial cavern located under Serpent Lake. So here we go, down into the tunnel. So it's got a huge drain pipe, and when you get down here, there's actually 3 dungeons and a raid, which is kind of nice that they're all in a sort of a just nifty little spot for us. And the cool thing here too is if you get up to Exalted with the Cenarian Circle, the little guy who's standing here, the little NPC, actually becomes a vendor, which is so helpful. I have one character who's actually Exalted because it's not account wide, it is per character. But that character can just come out of the dungeons and raids as I'm going in for transmog runs and just sell all the junk. It's a great way to make a little bit of extra gold. So this guy right here is a vendor if you're Exalted with the Cenarian Circle. So little fun fact, if you didn't know it, now you do. Like I said, there are 3 dungeons and a raid there. Now we're coming up on the second of the Alliance areas, but it's only sort of Alliance area. It's comprised mostly of the Kurenai, a faction of the Broken who seek to re-establish their ties with uncorrupted Draenei. It has a flight path, it has vendors, you have cooking supplies, but if you're not at least friendly with them, they don't offer you a whole heck of a lot. But you do kind of have to go through here to get to the Blade's Edge Mountains. So I thought that was kind of interesting. In the past, it was a center and place of Draenei civilization, learning, and trade, but after Illidan took control of the Black Temple, Akama and Maev came here to speak about the Betrayer. And then it ended up being mostly a place for the Broken. Interestingly enough, really quick, it's also possibly named after Orbo, which is a town in northern Sweden that has a very large mushroom-shaped landmark. So, who knows? It's a possibility. So we're just going to touch down a little bit here in Daggerfen Village on our way to the Angrosh Grounds and Stronghold. The Angrosh Grounds is a area in northwestern Zangarmarsh that is just absolutely full of Angrosh ogres who have their own spiffy little stronghold way up in the corner. It's a floating island fortress that is held by the Angrosh tribe and has a bunch of interesting little quests in it that I don't remember too much about, but I do remember that their cavern is really, really cool, and yet another cavern that I got lost in a lot. Now when I go there, I tend to just go to mine ores because it does have a lot of ore, and ore is one of those things that I feel like in Outland is kind of few and far between, so it is sort of a really good spot to get fell iron ore and a few of the other more esoteric ores. But here you see some of the ogres. Now, something that I found interesting is I found out that each head of the two-headed ogres actually has their own personality. They're kind of like conjoined twins, but not, I guess, if you want to go that way. So now we're going to go to Sporgar, which honestly is probably one of my favorite places in Zangarmarsh, and it is, if I'm remembering correctly, this is the second faction in the entire game that I ever hit Exalted with, and I hit Exalted because I wanted pets. And this was before pets could even be kept in their own pet tab. You actually had to have them in your bag back then. But I still wanted it. I wanted my own cute little spore bat, or was it the firefly? I can't remember which pet it was, but I ground out these quests to get to Exalted. So I got to know these guys pretty well. And it's fun because you can do a repeatable quest where you just go and kill Naga. They definitely have it in for the Naga. You can also turn in what are they called? The little bushes that are in the, not the slave pens, one of those dungeons that's down there in the middle. And they will totally take those after you get to a certain point. I think after you get to Revered, you really can only get to Exalted by grinding out the dungeons. But you know what? It was worth it for me. Now, Sporgar is the capital of the Sporelings. It's found along the western edge of Zangarmarsh. The Sporelings are a mostly peaceful race of mushroom men that are native to Outland, and the changing climate has put them in danger. That little dude that we were just at is the master pet trainer of the Sporelings, and initially getting you up to, I do believe, Revered, your repeatable quests that you'll be doing, which you'll pick up from this little guy that we're going to go see right now, is to turn in Boglord tendrils and save the Sporelings. So that is something I remember doing and remember doing well. But Fashan there will give you that quest, and it is repeatable, I think, up until Revered. Now, there is an interesting little watch post out here. This is Watcher Lessa O. She is from the Cenarian Circle, and she's always been one of my favorite characters, mostly because of her name. Every time I would see her, I would think, oh, it's time to reread the Dragon Riders of Pern, because Watcher Lessa O just reminds me of Lessa from the Dragon Riders series. So, it's interesting. I don't know if she was actually named for Lessa of Pern, but I like to think she was. You know, I could be wrong, but I could be right. I don't know. Maybe. And the quest that she'll have you do is just over there trying to figure out why the Bog Lords are eating Sporling babies. The Feralfen village is just another little village of lost ones, but they have overtaken the Bomau ruins. I probably mispronounced that, but that's okay. I don't care. Anyway, they took over these ruins, and they're kind of cool because they're actually druids, which is interesting because the Draenei cannot be druids as far as I know. No, I do know. Draenei can't be druids. But Lost Ones evidently can, and that's an interesting thing. I don't know if there's an actual lore reason why Lost Ones could be druids and Draenei can't. If anybody knows, let me know. Now, if we zoom around the lagoon, you'll see the Naga. They're kind of everywhere. It's interesting because they are working with the Lost Ones, but I don't think it's exactly a friendly relationship. And we're gonna come over there. You can just see out of the corner of your eye back there one of the pumping stations as they're trying to pump all of the water out. Evidently, it had something to do with Illidan, but I didn't read up on it quite enough. So if you know the real reason why they're pumping all the water out, let me know, because I'm kind of curious now. But yeah, the Naga are busily pumping out all the water. The only thing I really saw about what they could possibly have been doing with the water is possibly Illidan wanted it to make another Well of Eternity, but I'm not sure if that's true or not. Now, here in a couple minutes, we're going to be turning this over to Onyx, who's going to take us to the 2 Horde outposts here in Zangarmarsh. So she'll be doing that in just a minute after we go see Fungor Cavern, which is where our little Sporling friends are locked in constant battle with the marsh lurkers. This is another really cool cavern that I managed to get myself lost in far more times than I want to actually admit. And right before we turn this over to Onyx, I want to show you the coolest mushroom that I don't know why this mushroom has a glowing, like, aurora around the bottom of it. I flew up to the top of it trying to figure it out. It seems to be the only one I've ever seen like that, and I just thought it was cool. So there you go. I just thought it was cool. Anyway, now we're going to be turning this all over to Onyx, who will take us to the Swamp Rat post and everything like that, and I will see you in a bit. And here we are with Onyx, who's going to head over to the Swamp Rat post. Now, there's not much really to the Swamp Rat post. It's a jungle troll fishing village. It's in northeastern Zangarmarsh. It is what will send Horde players over into the Deadmire. It does have a flight path. It's probably the first Horde exclusive area that you will come to after you leave the Cenarian post. And, you know, there's not a whole heck of a lot else to it, but there is one of the creepier things that I find about the whole Horde aesthetic. And it's not so much the skulls that get to me, but we're going to go take a look at the rug that is under this NPC up here, because it's I think it's supposed to be a a a centaur. It's a little bit creepy. It still has its face. It's kind of disturbing, and it's not the first one that I've seen, but it was very, very detailed, and it just makes me wonder. You know, in general, I'm cool with the horde aesthetic, but every once in a while I just see something like that, and I'm like, huh, well, that's something now, isn't it? So, yeah. The skulls don't bother me so much. All the tusks don't get to me, but the centaur skin rug, it's just a little much for me. But you know what, that's okay. So, something interesting about Umberfin Lake is the number of quests that are actually underwater in this zone. I can think of like 4 or 5 different quests that are underwater, and that just feels very unusual in normal questing. Just one of those little things that I just happened to think about as I was flying over here looking at all the Naga. So the last place that we are going is the second horde area of Zabra Jin. It's kind of a cool place. You know, I really appreciate all the walkways that we're going to be seeing. I just wish that there was a way other than flying for you to get up on them, because it's just kind of a really, I guess, neat area. And I think it's mostly the RP person in me that would just really like to have my own little tree house, and these are kind of like my own little tree house if there was just an easier way up to it. There's also a set of trolls here that are kind of hilarious to me, because as I was watching them, and as we get closer to them, I'll point it out again, I noticed that they're doing a really cool martial art called capoeira. And they're doing capoeira, and they're throwing what appears to be a football or a soccer ball back and forth at each other, and it just looked like fun. But yeah, these are the walkways. You can see rope ladders, but they're not functional rope ladders for players, which is too bad, because, like I said, really cool aesthetic looking area, and I would like to just have my character go hang out up there. But yeah, you can see right here, they're playing basically football and doing capoeira. So, interesting. I thought that was just kind of cool. So yeah, other than that, Zabrajin is a large horde-aligned troll town. It's got huts connecting to a few mushrooms and wood planks that hold the other buildings up above the marsh. There's a flight point here, there's a forge here, and it is possibly named after the troll priest Zabra Hex. So he possibly is the origin of the name of this place. Other than that, there's not a heck of a lot to it. I feel like I say that a lot, but there's not really a lot of lore as far as the anything other than orcs in Outland. Everybody else is kind of an import, because as we know now, Outland was once Draenor, and now it's just Outland, because boy oh boy, opening up all these dimensional portals sure does a number to the local ecology. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're going to leave it. Onyx is going to take us all the way up to the top of the tower, and that's really about it this week. Thankfully, there's not another centaur skin rug. This one kind of looks like it might be a crocodile, or it could be a Kodo. If it's a Kodo, it's been dehorned. I'm not really sure what this rug is, but after the centaur skin, I just had to come and actually look at it a little bit closer. So I'm pretty sure next week we will be going up and into the Blade's Edge Mountains. That is an area that I'm going to have to do some massive research on, because although I've quested there, it's not my favorite questing zone. So I have only quested there just to get Lore Master of Lord Master. I only quested there to get Lore Master, and that's pretty much it. So I don't really remember too much about it, so I'm going to have to spend some time running around and poking through everything and seeing if I find anything interesting. Like finding out what on earth formed Zangarmarsh. Still kind of weirded out about the whole sentient mushrooms thing. Interesting lore. Anyway, thank you, as always, for hanging out with me. Like I said, next week we're going to be going up into the Blade's Edge Mountains, checking out all those things. As you can see, Onyx has not spent much time in the Blade's Edge Mountains at all. Most of the map is completely covered up. I'm going to have to rectify that between this week and next. But until then, from me and Onyx and Beryl, I'll see you later. Say goodbye, Onyx.